I mean, say what you like, but this is so much fun. Hello then, my fellow sorcerers, and welcome to, well, Ball Lightning Season 7 edition. Fueled by not one, but two brand new unique focuses, this is actually really, really good. It plays incredibly satisfyingly. It is a monster of a quick speed farmer. It does some serious damage, and it just feels so smooth. Casting the ball lightning while moving is really, really lovely, and everything else just kind of feels janky after you try this. That said, both focuses are completely viable. They're about equally as strong, and you can use them both in this exact same build, so you can essentially choose your playstyle. I do favor Okun's Catalyst, however, as I just said. The point is, though, that yeah, Ball Lightning is looking really, really swish, and I cannot recommend it enough. It's, of course, not Season 2 levels, and it's not as good at bossing specifically as Fireball is, but in every other area, it does beat it. Especially because as soon as you get corridors in the pit, your fireballs get eaten, and it's just mind-numbingly frustrating to play, whereas Ball Lightning just smoothly washes through the dungeon and disintegrates everything on the way past. It is fantastic for getting your glyphs up if you don't have a Druid, Barbarian, or Necromancer friend to do it for you. And it's at this point I should say that, of course, I am making builds for sorcerers. So when I say that something is powerful, I mean relative to sorcerers. This caused a little bit of weird confusion in the Fireball build. What the other classes are doing doesn't change the relative power difference between our sorcerer options, which is always what I'm referring to. So when I say that this Ball Lightning build is monstrously strong, it is for sorcerer options. And those of us that have stuck the course, and I will always be sorcerer, I love it, and I will always be with you through every season to give you the sorcerer goodness, are rewarded with an incredibly cool new take on Ball Lightning to play. It farms every bit of content you could ever want to with effortless ease, and it's really, really satisfying to bring together. The new Paragon legendary node buffs give us a serious boost alongside the skill tree changes. The new gravitational aspect is really enjoyable, constantly vortexing enemies in. And look, I know it's not like the super most impressive thing, 'cause it's just the open world in Torment 4, but for doing stuff like headhunts, I mean, look at this. You're just flying across the land and hoovering up everything as you go, and there really isn't anything else quite like it. Well, I guess unless you want to play Lightning Spear for the 80,000th time. I am so sick of that build. In any case, this is up there as essentially in contention for our build of the season if you evaluate everything, not just the raw pit tier it can reach, which, let's be honest, past 100, which this is more than capable of doing in optimum gear, doesn't really matter at all because you get nothing for doing it. It is obviously a shame that Sorcerer finds itself at the bottom of the rung damage-wise this season, but that doesn't take away from the fact that mechanically, as a functioning class, we have never been better. It has never been more enjoyable to just be a Sorcerer than it is right now. And that's where we want to be, because now we just need numbers go up, we don't need core changes. And I have to have faith that we are going to get our turn to be ridiculous. But in any case, if you, like me, just love the Sorcerer too much to quit at any point, well, Ball Lightning is going to be for you, because it's seriously phenomenal now. The only warning I really need to give is that it does require a fair bit of gearing, and until you get that fair bit of gear, Fireball remains better, but then once you do, Ball Lightning really comes into its own. So without further ado, let's get into the skill tree. I am scrolling to the top, and then I'll start explaining what I've taken now, 2 points anywhere into your basics, so we can move on to your cause, and then we just fill out elemental dominance, because it's the best of everything here, and free damage. We'll have full mana a lot, so why not? Then, if you need a little bit of extra help with your resist, then put it in potent warning. If not, just whack a point in devastation. We just need to move on to defensives. Grab just a single bit of flame shield so we can press it. It's a useful ability to have, ignoring boss mechanics, but it also gives us a reliable way to get the fire stack of Talrashes. Then we get the usual teleport into enhanced and shimmering for the speed and DR and just the general amazingness that is teleport. Hey, at least that's something Sorcerer's got. Teleport is still the best utility mobility skill in the game. Then we fill out glass cannon because it's just a free damage, and we are especially tanky in this build with the extra damage reduction on the unique. We grab ourselves ice armor. We have so much cooldown reduction we don't really need to help it with shimmering, so we grab this extra 15% multiplicative as we will be freezing enemies a lot. Talking of freezing enemies a lot for more multiplicative damage, new Frost Nova, taken down to enhanced and then mystical. This really is lovely, and it becomes our first enchantment slot. Our swarm of ice blades will be applying it a lot, and of course your lightning spears created by unstable currents and your familiars too. Then we move on to conjurations, where we fill out precision magic, mainly because we kind of have the points to, and there is a few little lucky hit things going on, so why not? But this one isn't like super key, so you can spend these elsewhere if you need to. Grab yourself a familiar all the way to enhanced and then invoked, so the lightning familiars that come out of unstable currents give us that 10% multiplicative increase to damage. Then we have ice blades making up our second enchantment slot, all the way to enhanced and roaring, so we get that lovely cooldown reduction everywhere. We will have so many ice blades out in this build, most of the time the cap of them. Then we get full-on mana shield for the damage reduction, and then finally protection for the constant barriers to both power our offensive aspects and, you know, not die. Then we move on to here. Though that said, if you don't want the lucky hit, it's not a bad idea to fill out Lightning Spear for enhanced and invoked for even more potency when they come out of unstable currents, just as a thought. Then we want to fill out Inner Flames for the free damage, and that's that. Now the star of the show, max out your ball lightning, take it to enhanced, and then wizards. We need this crackling energy generation, both for the mana from Invigorating Conduit, which you want to fill out, but also for the legendary Paragon node when we get to it. Then we head over to our ultimate, so where we fill out Permafrost, Hoarfrost, and Icy Touch. It is all just lovely free damage, Hoarfrost especially on the frozen enemies that we will be generating lots of, and then we get the free cooldown reduction that is Evocation. Elemental Synergies, by the way, is another good option if you don't want to have the lucky hit, or indeed if you have enough cooldown reduction on your gear that you don't need to put extra points into unstable currents to get the cooldown lower. You can leave it as 2 ranks, grab Elemental Synergies for a little bit more damage, but I like the reliability of filling out the unstable currents and getting that cooldown as low as possible, so we have 100% uptime without the need for Orange Herald, which I'm quite proud of. Grab the free Bucket 2 attack speed, always good to have, the survivability from electrocution, and then lastly enlightenment as by far and away the best offensive key passive for this setup. So when it comes to playing this, it's fairly straightforward. You just hold down the ball lightning button, get to the maximum 20, and enjoy mass damage to everything around you. You can obviously cast it freely while moving, like you aren't casting at all thanks to the unique, which is an absolute wonderful feeling. So you just always want to be going fast, dodging forward, and yes, you can replace the Frost Nova enchant with the teleport enchant if you want to go faster and have a little bit less damage, which is probably best while farming like headhunts, but other than that, you really are just constantly moving around, permanently casting. The other reason you're moving around, other than because you can, is to keep picking up the crackling energy to make sure you never run out of mana. In any case, the rest of the time, press your ice blades on cooldown, press unstable currents on cooldown, teleport to go quick, save your flame shield to either give you a 3rd stack of Talrashes or to immune an annoying boss mechanic or lots of random garbage from an elite pack on the floor, and then ice armor also on cooldown. Once everything starts rolling, as you will see, we really do cycle through our cooldowns something fierce, and we more than comfortably have permanent unstable currents going on, which is always really good to see. It really is super straightforward. We have like 5k health, permanent 3k barrier. We are so tanky. Just blast in a line and enjoy it. If you do want to put on Stormhorn instead, well then you play it more like Fireball at range, blasting the ball lightnings towards your target. Otherwise, it's the same. Gear is up next then, beginning with your legendary aspects. You want to have Conceited on either your weapon or your gloves, and then whichever one you don't have Conceited on, you want to have Storm Swell. We'll have permanent ice armor and thus permanent barrier, so this is just a combined big multiplier, and the Frozen is more relevant than ever because of the Frost Novas will be constantly churning out. On your amulet, you want to have Shredding Blades for the big vulnerable damage increase. Then on your legs, you want new Gravitational, so it can keep pulling people in, exploding, and just generally helping the ball lightning playstyle. For your uniques then, on your boots, you want Rakenov's Wake. The Resist All Elements is just fantastic for easy capping. The cooldown reduction is just awesome for the speed of the build. The non-physical damage for enlightenment. It really is just a phenomenal pair of boots for nearly every build. Then you want the usual Tal Rashers for that big stacking 75% damage increase. The star of the show in either Okun's Catalyst or the Strike of Stormhorn. Again, I prefer Okuns. And then we get to perhaps the more contentious slots, where I have Ring of Starless Skies, your Shroud of False Death, and your Air of Perdition. Now, while I would say you want at least one of these three before swapping to Ball Lightning from Fireball, you can certainly play this and do fine without them. If you don't have Air of Perdition, you can just whack on a Godslayer Crown and you will be fine. If you don't have Shroud of False Death, then Raiment of the Infinite will be your friend and a good replacement. If you don't have Ring of Starless Skies, which is honestly probably the most important one, it really helps this build, and it is the one I would recommend you go for before swapping. You can get away with just a normal ring, make sure it's got attack speed, give it another offensive aspect, and you can make that work. Also, I should mention the boots are potentially interchangeable with normal boots that have ranks of Ball Lightning. That does add a good amount of damage, but I just really prefer everything that Rakenov's brings, but it's something to point out. So your affixes then should be as follows. On your sword, and it should be a sword for the critical strike damage, you want intelligence, max life, and critical strike damage. On your legs, you want armor, life, and intelligence, and ideally you want the armor to be a greater affix so you can make the 1000 armor cap. Then on your gloves, you want to have critical strike damage, intelligence, ranks to core skills, or your critical strike chance or damage. Any of those will do you best, but of course ranks to core skills is going to be optimum, as Ball Lightning counts as a core skill. On your amulet, you want just ranks to stuff that helps. Inner Flames is solid, it's free damage. You can get any of the Frosty Trio, that will also help you out, and even Glass Cannon's not the worst, though I would definitely recommend it the least. Just two ideally affixes that give you ranks to just generically damaging passives, and then percent intelligence. Failing that, health, your cooldown reduction, anything crit related, and attack speed is going to be fine too. For your gems, you want critical strike damage in your weapons, you want intelligence in your one free piece of gear, and you want to, well, we will get to the occult stuff. Then your runes, you want the following. You want cast a non-channeled core skill, or cast a skill with a cooldown, and then ideally you want the Barbarian's Warcry, or Mystical Frost Nova, so you can have two lots of this going off, both from your enchantment slot and from this rune, so we have constant freezes and damage being increased, activating everywhere, all around us. The choice is yours. The big important one though, and this is what lets us get away with not having Orange Herald, because if we needed Orange Herald for unstable currents uptime, we would have to use regular boots, so we could have both Gravitational and Orange Herald, but because I've gone for this this rune combination, the new maintain a summon for at least 5 seconds gives you offering. Every ice blade lasts 6 seconds, so it just fuels itself, coupled with reduce your ultimate cooldown by 1 second. This by itself gives you permanent unstable currents alongside our cooldown reduction, and is a really lovely way to essentially have our cake and eat it too. Past that, you just want to make sure you've got your 1000 armor cap always and forever, and make sure that you are at your 70% all resist. Rakanos will pretty much do this for you, especially if you've got your Starless Skies and such, but it's always worth mentioning. Ideally, you want to have an elixir of advantage on for this, and you can always use the Soothing Spices for the all resistant armor if you're not quite there yet on Torment 4. Which powers then? Well, I'm glad you asked. Honestly, best thing of this season, being able to do that every build guide. In any case, you want Doom Orb for your unique, chiefly because it's an Eldritch power, and we want 3 Eldritch powers. It also does a fairly solid amount of damage, though it does taper off a little bit compared to earlier in the game. Then we want Purging Touch, your Eldritch effects do increased damage to everything once you get it high enough rank, and eventually with Occult Gems, we will be making our Ball Lightning count as Eldritch, so this is just a nice increase to it. Then we want Soul Harvest to keep getting that % primary core stat that lasts forever from all the groups of enemies around us. It's just really lovely to keep inflating our intelligence for then damage. After that, we want Hex of Flames. The reason we want that is we simply want a hex on the enemy to activate an occult gem. It's not really more complicated than that. This is just the hex of choice. Then we want Aura of Siphoning because we need an aura, and this one is the best one to do it, and at rank 10 it's got some nice survivability. The reason we need an aura is ideally this would be Aura Specialization, the lost power that gives you a load of critical damage on top of making your auras bigger while you have an aura. I don't have that yet because despite doing hundreds of dungeons I've only found 1 lost power, but it is what it is. In the meantime, you can put on Breath of the Coven and you will be fine. I realize that's also a lost power, but if you get that one first, that is the way to go. Otherwise, you can pretty much just choose what you'd like. For your creepy occult gems then, you want the following. Elder Sigil for 25% increase mastery damage on hexed enemies. Ball Lightning is a mastery skill, also a core skill, so we can double dip there, and this one is solid. Past that, we jump straight to legendaries, where we want, ideally, Witching Hour. This will make your Ball Lightning count as a core skill every second, which will then give it the Eldritch increases, and that's really, really nice. After that, you want either Moonlight Ward if you want some more survivability, or you can go Duststone for some more damage. Hungering Void can also be quite fun as an extra set of pull-ins to keep, absorbing enemies into the Ring of Ball Lightning. Tempering then, on your sword, you want to have critical strike damage and chance for Ball Lightning to cast twice. On your gloves, you ideally want critical strike damage, and then it's a little bit murkier. You have a lot of options. I tried to get some extra lucky hit, but it's not really that worthwhile, and I mainly want these gloves to kind of work for multiple builds because I don't have a lot of good glove options, but there's really not a hugely critical thing that you need here, so feel free to just sort of choose. On your legs, you want % total armor, and you want lucky hit chance to freeze, which is also something you can double up with on your gloves. Then, finally, on your neck, you want ideally critical damage. I ended up with vulnerable, and I'm not going to push it further because I'm out of tries, and then unstable currents cooldown reduction. That's also what you want on your ring if you have a second legendary ring instead of Starless Skies. For anything specific on the Masterworking front, you want to try and hit all of the ranks of things around the place. That will give you the most value. Past that, cooldown reduction, the chance for Ball Lightning to cast twice, and then you will be fine. Paragon, to cap this off then. It actually is quite good how much power you can get with fairly little points. I'm only on 208 to spend, and I'm fairly happy with what's there. Everything else is just a little increase every every time we get a point. Everything core is in place. So follow me for said point for point, initially heading up and right, grabbing Elementalist. Anything that isn't required to either activate a glyph or to get to the next section, like this random point here, don't do unless you also have the spare points or more points than I do. Then we want to head left through Resilience, up through this double decks, right to the glyph slot where we slot and activate Tactician. Then we want to head right, grabbing Studied, the magic nodes around it if you have the points, and then to Elemental Balance and all the way up into the next board, which is going to be your fundamental release board. We want to have the glyph closest to the gate. We want to head right out the gate, up to Lightning Cutter, and then left to the glyph slot where we will put in Exploit. Now, I can actually get rid of that because I upgraded it finally to Legendary, so we got that extra radius, so that's very, very nice, and then I can go along and just grab some extra lightning damage, which is the kind of thing you want to slowly be doing as you go through it. In any case, Exploit, very, very nice here. Grab yourself Elemental Balance, and then head up to Fundamental Release itself and acquire that. At this point, we want to head right over here, stop at this willpower, up to Overdrive, get some nice damage reduction, then head into the first board after Fundamental, which is going to be your Frigid Fate for that lovely 60% multiplicative damage. We want to continue down to here, go straight to the glyph, where we will slot and put in Elementalist, head over to Elemental Favor, and then up past Weakness all the way around and get said Frigid Fate. If you have the spare points, down here for a nice little extra 50% chunk of vulnerable damage too. Then we want to head up past Fundamental Release, going right to Kindling, grabbing the crit damage if you can, going left to Suffused Resilience, and then up to the gate where we will be placing Ceaseless Conduit. This build churns through crackling energy, and a permanent 60% multiplicative damage increase is really, really nice. Honestly, the order that you do these last two boards isn't hugely important as long as you've got the stats to activate everything, which if you have Perdition, you definitely will. In any case, we want to get to this Intelligence via left in order to go through Conduit, and then all the way around to grab Ceaseless Conduit. Then we go right to the glyph slot. We want to grab this Intelligence along the way, and here we put Adept and activate it by grabbing Galvanic Catalyst, and then finally Devastate. Then we want to head up and left from Elemental Balance, grabbing Electromagnetism and the other damage reduction along the way, to the final board where we will put Static Surge. Head over to the glyph with it arranged like this, slot and activate Destruction, and with spare points you can start grabbing all of the decks in the area to amplify this up. This is the first glyph you do that for. Then grab Incapacitate, go round through it, and get Static Surge for another 50% multiplicative damage increase. Then head down and get Electro 2. So that's the current Paragon board. After that, you just keep filling points into nodes that give you bits of damage, like 10% lightning damage here. That then is that. Season 7 new Ball Lightning with the new uniques, mechanically flawless, so much fun to play, and if we ignore the other classes, yeah, feels really powerful on Torment 4, which is, you know, the proper endgame and sort of what matters. Hopefully, though, next season, you know, please, Sorcerer's turn. Come on now. Like you've enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more. Consider supporting the future channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.